So previously I did my political compass test, and now I've decided to do an 8 values test. So this is the 8 values test. What is 8 values? 8 values is, in essence, a political quiz that attempts to assign percentages for 8 different political values. You will be presented by a statement, and then you will answer with your opinion on the statement, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, with each answer slightly affecting your scores. At the end of the quiz, you will be compared to the maximum possible of each value, thus giving you a percentage. Answer honestly. And there'll be 70 questions in the test. What are the 8 values? There are 4 independent axes: economic, diplomatic, state, and society, and each has 2 opposing values assigned to them. They are equality on the economic axis. Those with higher equality scores believe the economy should distribute value evenly among the populace. They tend to support progressive tax codes, social programs, and at high values, socialism. Markets. Economic. Those with higher market scores believe the economy should be focused on rapid growth. They tend to support lower taxes, privatization, deregulation, and at high values, laissez-faire capitalism. Nation on the diplomatic. Those with higher nation scores are patriotic and nationalist. They often believe in an aggressive foreign policy, valuing the military, strength, sovereignty, and at high values, territorial expansion. Globe on the diplomatic. Those with higher globe scores are cosmopolitan and globalist. They often believe in a peaceful foreign policy, emphasizing diplomacy, cooperation, integration, and at high values, a world government. Liberty on the state axis. Those with higher liberty scores believe in strong civil liberties. They tend to support democracy and oppose state intervention in personal lives. Note that this refers to civil liberties, not economic liberties. Authority, state. Those with higher authority scores believe in strong state power. They tend to support state intervention in personal lives, government surveillance, and at high values, censorship or autocracy. Tradition on the society axis. Those with higher tradition scores believe in traditional values and strict adherence to a moral code. Though not always, they are usually religious and support the status quo or the status quo ante. Progress on society. Those with higher progress scores believe in social change and rationality. Though not always, they are usually secular or atheist and support environmental action and scientific or technological research. So let's click here to start. You'll be presented with a series of statements. For each one, click the button with your opinion on it. Got it. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. So I will have to strongly disagree, because a government has much more power than any corporation can have on your personal life. So strongly disagree. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. I will have to agree with this, because there are some times where a consumer cannot, an individual consumer cannot protect themselves, or consumers need to be protected prior to certain negative outcomes. The freer the market, the freer the people. In general, I strongly agree with this. The freer the markets, the freer the people. It is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. Yes, constantly accruing larger and larger debt will only harm your economy in the long run. We see this problem in Greece. Their welfare got way out of hand, and it destroyed their country. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. On this case, I will have to disagree. I don't believe it is more beneficial. I believe that there has been good research both in the public and the private sector, but there is nothing to say that it's more beneficial, and I would rather it be private. International trade is beneficial. Yes, I don't see, or I do believe that international trade is beneficial. It is beneficial to the economy as a whole. Whether there's specific situations where it's not beneficial, that's obvious. There's always going to be situations where it's not beneficial to some small individual. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. That is communism, and I strongly disagree with communism. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Absolutely agree. Social programs are destroying our society, producing all sorts of perverse incentives for various poor communities. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. Absolutely disagree with that. Taxes are not there to redistribute wealth. I do not believe this is good in any sense. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth. Yes. If we were to remove inheritance, then we would, in many ways, remove the incentive of people to work and to accumulate wealth, which then would hinder the growth of the economy and research and the progress on of our country. Public utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. I do believe there are stronger arguments in favor of certain public utilities being public rather than private. I think I will slightly agree with this. Excessive government intervention is a threat to the economy. Well, aside from the fact that excessive means it already says it is too much, I will say that large government intervention is a threat to the economy, and I would agree with this, where the greater the government intervention, the worse it ends up being for the economy. Those with a greater ability to pay should receive better health care. Like I said in the last one, I strongly agree with this. Quality education is a right of all people. It is not a right. I do not agree with this being a right. I do believe quality education is beneficial to all people, but it is not in any sense of the word a right, so strongly disagree. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. I believe that if a worker produces his own means, then yes, but in that sense he would be the entrepreneur or the owner of the business. And if he were to hire other workers beneath him, they shouldn't necessarily own the means of production. So strongly disagree. The United Nations should be abolished. Yes. 100% yes. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. I don't know about often, but it is necessary, so agree. I support regional unions such as the European Union. I do not support the European Union at all. It needs to be abolished. It's grown out of control and is becoming oppressive to the countries within the Union. So strongly disagree. It is important to maintain our national sovereignty. Yes, it is. If, as with the EU, if we surrender our national sovereignty, we then surrender our people and our government's autonomy and the ability to provide for its own citizens. Strongly agree. A united world government would be beneficial to mankind. A united world government is not beneficial to mankind as long as there is infallible human beings running this government. And so in this world, this will not be the case, that a united world government would be beneficial. So strongly disagree. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. More important. Both of these things are important. So peaceful relations. We shouldn't be starting wars where it's unnecessary. And our strength is also important. Rather than saying it's more important to retain peaceful relations, I think it's more important that our strength is what maintains our peaceful relations. So strongly disagree. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries. In the abstract sense, yes, wars do not need to be justified to other countries. There are justifications for war, such as being invaded or in these situations. However, for political reasons, wars cannot be entered into with no justification or in what would be considered an unjust manner, because then you would have other nations coming against you. So wars do not need to be justified to other countries. I do not, specifically in the case of like the UN, I don't think we need to justify ourselves to the UN. So overall, I would say strongly agree. Military spending is a waste of money. Strongly disagree. International aid is a waste of money. That's a hard one, but I think over time the evidence is mounting more and more against international aid, and I will say strongly agree. My nation is great. The United States is a great nation, so strongly agree. Research should be conducted on an international scale. This is the problem, the word I have a problem with. There is no should here. Is it good that some research is done on an international scale? Yes, but absolutely on a or that this ought to be something that happens, I will strongly disagree with that. Governments should be accountable to the international community. Strongly disagree, because the international community is filled with horrible countries that I want them to be held accountable to my nation rather than me being held accountable to their nation. A free democracy should not be held accountable to a socialist dictatorship under any circumstances. So strongly disagree. Even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. Violence is not acceptable. It depends on the situation, but ultimately there are times where it will be acceptable. So I must disagree with not acceptable. But I think it shouldn't be something that we resort to or our first response. So violence is acceptable. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. I do believe my religious values are important for the society and my nation to run healthily and properly. So they should be spread as much as possible. I would not, this does not mean that they should be spread by force, but evangelism and the like are good. So strongly agree. Our nation's values should be spread as much as possible. I do believe our nation's values should be spread as much as possible. I don't believe, and I don't think that we should be trying to manufacture other countries into becoming a democracy or republic or representative country. There are some countries where, at least in the current situation, they cannot maintain a democracy in a way that is beneficial to the people or to the nation, such as like the Middle East. So agree in general. It is very important to maintain law and order. Strongly agree. The general populace makes poor decisions. I will agree with this. In general, we can see that lots of people are making very poor decisions. You look at, let's say, any major Democrat city, any large city, and you see that there are lots of people making very poor decisions economically and socially, interpersonally, and all the like. So agree, but I don't believe that this necessarily characterizes the majority of the population, but a large portion for sure. Victimless crimes such as drugs should not be crimes at all. I disagree with this. I want drugs to be discouraged as much as possible. So, but that's a question of, do I strongly disagree with this or only slightly disagree? I'm going to strongly disagree with this. The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. This is, in the absolute sense, true. So agree. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. Is it necessary? I'm going to have to say, like, I don't remember all my answers in the last test, so some of my answers might differ slightly, but government surveillance, I do believe, is necessary, but of course it has gone too far, and there are certain boundaries that should not be crossed in surveillance, so I will agree. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. I believe the existence of the state is necessary for our liberty to exist. I believe our liberties will be destroyed without the existence of the state. So I will strongly disagree. Regardless of political opinions, it is important to side with your country. I do agree that your political opinions shouldn't make you automatically side against your countries. For instance, if you are more left-leaning and the United States engages in a war against a communist country, that shouldn't make you, or you should still in general side with your country in the war. But if the country were to then, there comes a point, of course, where it has to cross the line and you have to side against your country. For instance, if there's actual genocide or something like that going on. So it is important to side with your country. I will agree with this. No authority should be left unquestioned. Yes, of course, every authority needs to be questioned needs to be kept accountable. So agree. A hierarchical state is best. A hierarchical state is the only state. There cannot be a state that doesn't have hierarchy in it. So I guess strongly agree. It is important that the government follows the majority opinion, even if it is wrong. No. That's why we have things like the Constitution and the like. So the majority opinion would be the tyranny of the majority in this case. So I strongly disagree with this. The stronger the leadership, the better. If your leadership is not strong, then you have a problem. But that depends on what you, depending on what you mean by strong. The ability to get things done is not the best thing to do. You don't just want a leader in place because he gets things done and he can bully the opposition into going along with him. So we do need strong leaders, but we don't want leaders who can overpower any opposition. So I will just agree. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Yeah, I agree, and there's more to democracy than just decision-making. Environmental regulations are essential. To a certain extent, environmental regulations are essential. I believe I've already answered this, so agree. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. Yes, technology has made the world better, as in more comfortable, and giving us the ability to do and create more things like more food and the like. So yes, I agree, but there are a lot of other things necessary to create a better world, not just more science and more technology. So agree. Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. This is in large part what is wrong with the world, that there has not been enough religious and traditional values being passed on to the next generation. So strongly agree. In fact, I will say that we have been destroying our traditions. Traditions are of no value on their own. I will have to disagree. The very existence of a tradition demonstrates certain values. It communicates certain truths. Traditions need to be maintained, and they need to be taught, but their very existence does teach something, so there is some value to them. So I'll strongly disagree. Religion should play a role in government, in the sense that the people who are in the government are religious and are following with their religious beliefs and are allowed to exercise their religious beliefs publicly in the public space, then yes, I believe religion should play a role in government. But of course then we have the separation of church and state, which means the separation of church and state is only in regards to the government has no control over religious institutions. That is a one-way street. The government does not control religions or churches. It does not institute a state religion. But religious institutions, as they are part of the community and the nation in society, they will take a role in the government, whether the government likes that or not. And to try and stop that is actually hurting your populace. So strongly agree. churches should be taxed the same way other institutions are taxed. No, I believe that would then give the government the ability, like I said earlier, the ability to institute which religions it wants. It'll have control over the churches, so strongly disagree. Climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. No, that is not even close to an immediate threat, so strongly disagree. It is important that we work as a united world to combat climate change. It is not important. I will strongly disagree with this. Society was better many years ago than it is now. There are certain aspects of society that were better years ago. There are certain aspects of society that are better now. But I think in general, I think I'll agree with this. It is important that we maintain the traditions of our past. Strongly agree. It is important that we think in the long term, beyond our lifespans. Yes, thinking only in the here and now produces things like social security, where we're helping one person or one generation, the next generation is paying for it, and eventually it's just going to collapse. So, strongly agree. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. The destruction of our culture is one of the biggest problems in the current modern West. So, I would not say that reason is more important than maintaining our culture. Strongly disagree. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. Strongly disagree. Same-sex marriage should be legal. Same-sex relations are not. There is no marriage here. This defies the very definition of marriage, and the very purpose of what marriage is for. So, I will have to strongly disagree with this. No cultures are superior to others. I think I've answered this in the last one. There are obvious. The West is obviously superior to, let's say, the culture of Islam. So, I will strongly disagree. Sex outside of marriage is immoral. It is moral 100% of the time. Strongly agree. If we accept migrants at all, it is important that we assimilate into our culture, or that they assimilate into our culture. Yes, multiculturalism, the problem of multiculturalism is causing massive problems all over Europe and in certain areas of the United States, Canada, and just in general. Yes, we need people to assimilate into the culture that that immigrants migrate to. So strongly agree. Abortion should be prohibited in most or all cases. Yes, strongly agree. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. No, the very purpose of the Second Amendment is that that owning a gun is to resist tyranny, to resist a state that tries to oppress you. So the government should have no say in owning firearms, in who can or why you can or cannot own a firearm. So strongly disagree. I support single-payer universal health care. Strongly disagree. That has been a failure pretty much everywhere we see it. Sorry, that was my phone. Prostitution should be legal. Yes, strongly agree. It is that would harm our cultures and our communities and the like. Maintaining family values is essential. Again, strongly agree that society is built on the family unit. So strongly agree. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. Well, progressivism is the very result of chasing progress. And so yeah, I would strongly agree. Genetic modification is a force for good even on humans. Force for good, it's a thing that happens. I believe we need to be very careful with this. There are many unethical ways this could go, so I would not say that it's force for good necessarily. There are good results that have come out of it, so I will say disagree. We should open our borders to immigration. No, I want to restrict it a lot more than it is currently, so strongly disagree. Governments should be as concerned about foreign citizens as they are about those within their borders. No, the responsibility of a government is first and foremost to its own citizens. So strongly disagree. All people, regardless of factors like culture or sexuality, should be treated equally. Everyone should be treated equally in the sense that we are all treated, we all have access to the same God-given natural rights. However, there is the issue of privileges, and privileges are not a thing that everyone should be given. Everyone shouldn't have equal access to all privileges, so they should be treated equally. And then we have the issue of man and woman. Is the very idea of treating a man and a woman equally, that they need to be equal, I think is false. Men and women are not equal in any regard, so I think I'll disagree on this one. It is important that we further my group's goals above all others. If we are talking Christianity, yes, it's important to further the goals of Christianity above that of other religions. If we're talking about politics, I do try and push for my group's goals above the goals of others. So I think that from the individual's perspective, it's always going to be the case that they're going to push for their group's goals. So I think I'll strongly agree. Alright, so on the economic axis, I am a capitalist, where I'm 86% in favor of markets and 14% on equality. On diplomatic axis, I'm a chauvinist, 94.1% on favor of the nation, and it doesn't even say the world. I guess that's 5.9%, 6%. Wow, chauvinist. Authoritarian, I'm 81.9% authority and 18.1% in favor of liberty. So, well, there we go. And societal axis, I'm 87% in favor of tradition and 13% in favor of progress. And I am the capitalist fascism. That's so funny. The last time I took it, it said I was conservative. So we see, like, on the last test, I have gone farther to the right. Ideological matching is a work in progress and is much less accurate than the values and axes. You can send these results by copying. Okay. Capitalist fascism. Let's see. I'll save the image. Yeah, sure. There we go. So there we have it. I am a capitalist fascist now, apparently.